Deep beneath the ancient soil of China lies a secret that has remained untouched for over 2,000 years. A massive underground kingdom, sealed in darkness, where rivers of liquid mercury flow through chambers filled with treasure beyond imagination. This isn't the plot of some fantasy novel. This is real, and it's been waiting, locked away beneath a pyramid-shaped mound, for someone brave enough to break the seals and step inside. But here's the thing that should terrify you. Nobody has dared to open it. Not because they can't, but because they know what might happen if they do. Tonight, we're diving into the most mysterious tomb in human history. The final resting place of Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. A man so obsessed with immortality that he built an entire world underground, complete with booby traps, mercury rivers, and an army of 8,000 terracotta soldiers standing guard. And after 50 years of archaeological discoveries around this site, we still haven't answered the biggest question of all. What's actually inside that sealed tomb? What I'm about to show you will change everything you thought you knew about ancient civilizations. Because this isn't just a burial site. It's a technological marvel that challenges our understanding of what was possible over 2 millennia ago. Advanced metallurgy that wasn't supposed to exist until the 20th century. Drainage systems that still function today. And mercury levels so high that they're literally poisoning the air above ground. So settle in, because we're about to explore a hidden world that makes the pyramids of Egypt look simple by comparison. A world where ancient Chinese engineers created something so extraordinary, so dangerous, that modern science is still afraid to fully uncover it. The story begins in 259 BCE with the birth of a boy named Ying. Most children dream of becoming knights or princesses. This kid dreamed of conquering the entire known world. And by the age of 13, when he inherited the throne of the Qin state, he was already planning something that would make him immortal in ways he never expected. You see, China wasn't China back then. It was 6 independent kingdoms that had been slaughtering each other for over 2 centuries, in what historians call the Warring States period. Blood-soaked battlefields, shifting alliances, and constant warfare had turned the land into a nightmare. But young Ying looked at this chaos and saw opportunity. Through a combination of military genius, political cunning, and sheer ruthless determination, he began systematic by one, they fell, and innately conquering every rival kingdom. 221 BCE, he did something no one had ever done before. He unified all of China under a single rule. He gave himself a history. Qin Shi Huang, new name that had never existed in human, the first emperor. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Most conquerors would celebrate their victory and enjoy their power, not this emperor. Instead, he became obsessed with something far more ambitious than ruling the world. He wanted to rule forever. The first emperor believed that if he could just find the right combination of mercury, jade, and mystical elixirs, he could achieve true immortality. He sent expeditions to the far corners of his empire searching for magical ingredients. He consulted alchemists, mystics, and scholars. And while he was desperately trying to extend his life, he was simultaneously preparing for his death in the most elaborate way imaginable. Just 1 year after becoming emperor, at the age of 13, he ordered the construction of his mausoleum, not a simple tomb, an entire underground empire. And he gave his architects and engineers a mandate that sounds like something out of a science fiction movie: create a perfect replica of his earthly kingdom, but make it eternal. 700,000 workers were conscripted from across the empire. Think about that number for a moment. 700,000 people. That's more than the population of most modern cities, all working on a single construction project. Craftsmen, prisoners, and ordinary citizens forced to work off their debts were marched to a remote location near Mount Li, about 25 miles east of the capital city. For 38 years, this massive workforce dug, built, and created something that defied every convention of ancient burial practices. They weren't just building a tomb, they were constructing an underground world. According to the ancient historian Sima Xi'an, whose records provide our most detailed account of the tomb's construction, the workers dug through 3 layers of groundwater. Imagine the engineering challenge, creating a watertight seal deep enough to reach bedrock, then building upward from there. They installed bronze foundations, constructed palaces and towers for 100 different officials, and filled every chamber with rare artifacts and wonderful treasures. But the crown jewel of this underground kingdom was something that sounds absolutely impossible: a perfect map of the emperor's empire, complete with flowing rivers. Except these rivers weren't made of water. They were made of liquid mercury. The Yellow River, the Yangtze River, and all the great waterways of China were recreated in miniature was designed to represent the heavens, with pearls and precious mercury that was mechanically pumped to simulate real flowing water. The ceiling gems arranged to mirror the night sky. Every constellation, every star, perfectly positioned to create an eternal cosmos above the emperor's final resting place. And if that wasn't elaborate enough, the entire complex was rigged with crossbows and arrows, primed to automatically fire at anyone. Wasn't just a tomb, it was a fortress design who dared to enter uninvited. Fizzed to protect its secrets for all eternity. Now you might be thinking this all sounds like ancient mythology, fantastic stories told by historians who never actually saw the tomb themselves. But here's where modern science comes in with some absolutely chilling evidence. In 1974, farmers digging a well about a mile east of the emperor's tomb mound made a discovery that shocked the world. They uncovered a single terracotta warrior, but as archaeologists began excavating, they realized this warrior wasn't alone. He was part of an entire army of over 8,000 life-sized terracotta soldiers, each one individually crafted with unique facial features, expressions, and details. This discovery, which we now call the Terracotta Army, was just the beginning. Over the next 50 years, archaeologists have uncovered pit after pit filled with terracotta horses, chariots, acrobats, musicians, and government officials. The entire underground complex spans 22 square miles. 22 square miles of buried chambers, corridors, and rooms that we're still discovering today. But here's the truly unsettling part. All of these incredible discoveries are just the outer defenses of the tomb. The actual burial chamber, where the emperor's body lies, remains completely sealed. Nobody has ever been inside. And recent scientific testing has confirmed that the ancient historians weren't exaggerating about those mercury rivers. Soil samples taken from around the tomb mound show mercury concentrations as high as 2,204 parts per billion. To put that in perspective, normal soil contains less than 50 parts per billion of mercury. The levels around this tomb are off the charts, and it gets worse. Atmospheric testing has detected mercury vapor escaping from cracks in the ground above the tomb, reaching concentrations 5 times higher than normal background levels. The ancient Chinese weren't just using mercury symbolically, they were using massive quantities of it, and it's still down there, 2,000 years later, slowly leaking toxic vapors into the air above ground. This brings us to the most important question. If we have the technology to explore this tomb, why hasn't anyone opened it? The answer is both practical and terrifying. First, the mercury levels inside the tomb could be lethal to anyone who enters. Ancient Chinese alchemists believed mercury granted immortality, but we now know it causes severe neurological damage and death. Second, and perhaps more importantly, we've learned from excavating the Terracotta Army that exposure to air causes immediate and irreversible damage to ancient artifacts. The terracotta warriors were originally painted in brilliant colors, but within minutes of being exposed to Xi'an's dry air, the lacquer began to curl and the paint started flaking off. If the main burial chamber contains silk, wood, or other organic materials, opening it could destroy priceless artifacts in a matter of hours. But there's a third reason that archaeologists rarely discuss openly. They're genuinely concerned about those ancient booby traps. Think about this for a moment. The ancient Chinese were master engineers who created the Great Wall, developed advanced metallurgy techniques, and built sophisticated irrigation systems that still function today. They weren't primitive people fumbling around in the dark. They were brilliant architects and craftsmen who had 38 years to design the perfect security system. And according to historical records, they took that challenge very seriously. Sima Qian specifically mentions that crossbows and arrows were installed throughout the tomb, designed to automatically trigger when someone entered. Now, you might think that after 2,000 years, any mechanical traps would have long since deteriorated. But remember, this is the same civilization that created bronze weapons with chrome plating, a technology we thought was invented in 1932 Germany. When archaeologists excavated the Terracotta Army, they found over 40,000 bronze weapons in pristine condition. Swords, spears, crossbow bolts, and battle axes that were still razor-sharp after 2 millennia underground. The chrome plating had protected them so effectively that they showed no signs of rust or corrosion. If the Chinese could preserve weapons with that level of sophistication, what else might still be functional down there? But the booby traps aren't even the scariest part. It's the scale of what we're dealing with. Recent ground-penetrating radar and magnetic surveys have revealed that the underground complex is far larger than anyone initially imagined. The pyramid-shaped mound that marks the emperor's burial chamber is just the center of a vast network of tunnels, chambers, and corridors that extend in every direction. We're talking about an underground city, a complete replica of the emperor's capital, built in miniature but designed to last forever. And somewhere in the heart of that complex, sealed behind bronze doors and protected by mercury rivers, lies the body of China's first emperor, surrounded by treasures that could rewrite our understanding of ancient Chinese civilization. Here's what really keeps archaeologists awake at night. We know there's more down there that hasn't been discovered yet. The historical records mention terracotta concubines, entire courts of officials, and chambers filled with exotic treasures from across the known world. But we've only excavated about 1% of the total complex. 1%. That means 99% of this underground kingdom remains hidden, waiting to be explored. And every year that passes, the mystery deepens. In 2023, archaeologists discovered a new type of terracotta figure in pit number 2, a high-ranking military commander with elaborate decorations that had never been seen before. Only 10 such figures exist among the 8,000 warriors discovered so far, making each one incredibly rare and valuable. But what really got the archaeological community excited wasn't just the figure itself, it was where they found it. This commander was positioned at the entrance to a previously unknown section of the complex, suggesting there are entire areas of the tomb that we haven't even begun to explore. And then there are the mysteries that don't make sense, according to our current understanding of ancient technology, the drainage system, for instance. When archaeologists first discovered evidence of underground water management around the tomb, they assumed it had failed long ago. Ancient drainage systems weren't supposed to be sophisticated enough to handle groundwater at that depth. But when they investigated further, they found something impossible. The system was still working. After 2,000 years, the drainage network was still actively preventing groundwater from flooding the tomb chambers. The engineering precision required to create a watertight seal at that depth, using only ancient tools and techniques, should have been beyond the capabilities of any civilization from that era. Yet there it was, functioning perfectly, protecting whatever secrets lie beneath. This discovery forced archaeologists to reconsider everything they thought they knew about ancient Chinese engineering capabilities. If they could create drainage systems that lasted 2 millennia, what other advanced technologies might be hidden inside that sealed tomb? Some researchers have theorized that the emperor's engineers developed construction techniques that were centuries ahead of their time. Others suggest that the mercury isn't just decorative, it might actually serve as a preservation system, creating an environment inside the tomb that's hostile to bacteria and decay. But here's the most unsettling possibility. What if the ancient historians were right about everything? What if there really is a perfect underground replica of the Chinese Empire down there, complete with flowing mercury rivers and a ceiling that mirrors the night sky? What if the emperor's body has been perfectly preserved for 2,000 years, waiting in a chamber filled with treasures beyond imagination? The thought is both thrilling and terrifying. Because if that's true, then we're not just looking at an archaeological site. We're looking at a time capsule that could revolutionize our understanding of ancient history, technology, and human ambition. And yet, it remains sealed, waiting, protected by mercury vapors, ancient traps, and our own fear of what we might find inside. But the emperor's obsession with immortality didn't end with his elaborate tomb. While his workers were busy creating his underground kingdom, he was simultaneously pursuing every possible method of extending his life. He sent ships to distant islands searching for magical herbs. He consulted with alchemists who promised him elixirs of eternal youth. And most fatally, he regularly consumed mercury-based compounds that he believed would grant him immortality. The irony is almost poetic. The same substance that was supposed to make him live forever was slowly poisoning him to death. Ancient Chinese alchemists had convinced the emperor that mercury possessed magical properties. They told him it could purify his body, strengthen his spirit, and eventually transform him into an immortal being. So he drank it regularly, in carefully prepared doses that were supposed to gradually build up his tolerance, while cleansing his system of mortality itself. Modern medical science tells us exactly what was really happening. Mercury is one of the most toxic substances known to humanity. When consumed regularly, it accumulates in the brain, liver, and nervous system, causing progressive damage that eventually leads to madness and death. The emperor was literally poisoning himself in his quest for eternal life. And the tragic irony extends even further. While he was slowly dying from mercury poisoning, his workers were installing massive quantities of the same toxic substance throughout his tomb. The very element that killed him was being used to create the eternal paradise where his body would rest forever. When Qin Shi Huang finally died in 210 BCE, his death was kept secret for months while his advisors figured out how to manage the succession. But according to historical records, his final years were marked by paranoia, erratic behavior, and physical deterioration, all classic symptoms of chronic mercury poisoning. He had achieved a form of immortality, but not the kind he wanted. Instead of living forever, he created a monument that would preserve his memory and his secrets for thousands of years. And that monument is still there, still sealed, still protecting whatever remains of China's first emperor and the underground world he built around himself. The question that haunts every archaeologist who has studied this site is simple. Are we ready for what we might find inside? Because what we've discovered so far suggests that our textbooks might be completely wrong about what ancient civilizations were capable of achieving. Remember those bronze weapons I mentioned? The ones with chrome plating that shouldn't have existed for another 2,000 years? Well, that's just these weapons. They found something that made the beginning, when metallurgists analyze absolutely no sense. The chromium coating wasn't just decorative. It was applied using techniques that modern industry didn't develop until the 1,930 seconds. Think about what that means for a moment. We're not talking about lucky accidents or simple metalworking. This was precision chemistry applied on an industrial scale. Thousands of weapons, all treated with the same advanced process, all preserved with a level of sophistication that challenges everything we thought we knew about technological development. But it gets stranger. The bronze itself contains trace elements that create alloys stronger than anything European civilizations would produce for over a millennium. Swords that could slice through armor, spears that could penetrate shields, crossbow bolts with aerodynamic properties that rival modern ammunition design. And then there's the manufacturing precision. When archaeologists measured the terracotta warriors, they discovered something impossible: standardization. Not just similar proportions, but exact measurements. The feet, the facial features, all create repeated across thousands of individual figures. The hands to using templates and molds, with tolerances that would be impressive even by today's industrial standards. This wasn't artisan craftwork. This was mass production on a scale that wasn't supposed to exist until the Industrial Revolution. The implications are staggering. If ancient Chinese engineers could achieve this level of technological sophistication in weapon manufacturing and sculpture production, what else were they capable of? What technologies might be hidden inside that sealed tomb that we haven't even imagined yet? Some researchers have started asking uncomfortable questions. Questions that challenge fundamental assumptions about human technological progress. What if advancement wasn't linear? What if ancient lost to war, disaster, or the simple passage of time? The civilizations achieved technological peaks that were later Emperor's Tomb complex spans an area larger than most ancient cities. 22 square miles of underground construction that required engineering solutions we're still trying to understand. The logistics alone should have been impossible. Moving millions of tons of earth, managing a workforce of 700,000 people, coordinating construction across multiple sites simultaneously. These are challenges that would test modern project management capabilities. Yet somehow, using only ancient tools and organizational methods, they pulled it off. And they did it while simultaneously fighting wars, managing an empire, and developing new technologies that wouldn't be seen again for centuries. But here's where the story takes a darker turn. Because the more we learn about the tomb's construction, the more we realize that this wasn't just an impressive engineering project. It was also one of history's most massive crimes against humanity. Those 700,000 workers weren't volunteers. They were conscripted laborers, prisoners of war, and debt slaves forced to work under conditions that killed thousands. And according to historical accounts, their suffering didn't end when the construction was completed. Sima Qian's records contain a chilling detail that most people overlook. He wrote that when the emperor's funeral was complete, all the craftsmen who had worked on the inner chambers were sealed inside the tomb alive. The reason was simple: they knew too much. They had seen the layout, the traps, the treasure chambers. They could have drawn maps or revealed secrets that would compromise the tomb's security. So they were murdered, buried alive with their emperor to ensure their silence for eternity. And it wasn't just the craftsmen. Historical records suggest that all of the emperor's childless concubines were also entombed with him. Dozens, possibly hundreds of women who were killed simply because they had no heirs to carry on the imperial bloodline. The tomb wasn't just a monument to one man's ego. It was a mass grave containing the bodies of everyone who had helped create it. This raises disturbing questions about what else might be hidden inside those sealed chambers. If the emperor was willing to sacrifice hundreds of lives to protect his tomb's secrets, what exactly was he trying to hide? What could be so valuable, so dangerous, that it was worth committing genocide to keep it safe? Modern archaeologists are starting to piece together clues that suggest the answer might be more complex than simple greed or paranoia. The emperor wasn't just hoarding gold and jewels. He was preserving knowledge. Think about it from his perspective. He had just unified China for the first time in history. He had access to the accumulated wisdom, technologies, and secrets of 6 different kingdoms. Metallurgy techniques, engineering knowledge, military strategies, astronomical observations, centuries of advancement from multiple civilizations, all consolidated under his rule. What if the tomb isn't just a burial chamber? What if it's a library? A repository of ancient knowledge that he wanted to preserve for future generations of his dynasty. This theory gains credibility when you consider the emperor's other obsessions. He standardized currency, measurements, and writing systems across his empire. He built the Great Wall to protect Chinese civilization from northern invaders. Everything he did was focused on preservation and continuity. The tomb could be the ultimate expression of that same impulse. A time capsule containing not just treasure, but the technological and intellectual achievements of an entire civilization. Knowledge that could revolutionize our understanding of ancient science, engineering, and culture. But accessing that knowledge comes with risks that go far beyond mercury poisoning or ancient booby traps. Here's something that will keep you awake tonight. What if we're not ready for what's inside? What if the technologies preserved in that tomb are so advanced, so far ahead of what we think ancient people were capable of, that discovering them would force us to rewrite human history completely? Consider the metallurgy alone. Chrome plating that predates modern chemistry by 2 millennia. Bronze alloys with properties that exceed medieval European steel. Manufacturing techniques that suggest industrial-scale production capabilities. Now imagine what else might be preserved in those mercury-sealed chambers. Astronomical instruments that could reveal advanced knowledge of celestial mechanics. Engineering blueprints for construction projects that dwarf anything built in the ancient world. Mathematical texts that contain calculations we're only now beginning to understand. The emperor's obsession with immortality might have, and knowledge that were consider, led him to preserve technologies too dangerous or too advanced for his own time. Secrets that he intended to pass on only to future generations of his bloodline when humanity was ready to handle such powerful information. And if that's true, then the tomb isn't just an archaeological site. It's a potential technological revolution waiting to be unleashed. But revolutions are dangerous things. They disrupt existing power structures, challenge established beliefs, and force people to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves and their world. What if the knowledge inside that tomb proves that ancient civilizations were far more advanced than we've been taught? What if it reveals that human technological progress has been cyclical rather than linear? What if it contains evidence of achievements that would embarrass our modern sense of superiority? These aren't just academic questions, they're existential challenges to the way we understand our place in history and our relationship with the past. And that brings us to perhaps the most unsettling possibility of all. What if someone doesn't want that tomb opened? What if there are forces, academic, political, or economic, that benefit from maintaining our current understanding of ancient history? Think about the implications. If ancient Chinese engineers could achieve technological sophistication that rivals modern capabilities, what does that say about the supposed superiority of Western civilization? What does it mean for educational systems that have taught linear technological progress as an established fact? The tomb of China's first emperor isn't just a burial site. It's a potential paradigm shift that could reshape our understanding of human achievement and technological development. And paradigm shifts are always resisted by those who have built their power and authority on the old paradigm. So maybe the real reason that tomb remains sealed isn't technical difficulty or safety concerns. Maybe it's institutional fear. Fear of discoveries that are too disruptive, too challenging, too revolutionary for our current world to handle. After all, it's much easier to maintain the status quo than to confront evidence that everything you thought you knew about the past might be wrong. But the emperor's underground kingdom is still there, waiting in the darkness, still protected by mercury rivers and ancient traps, still guarding secrets that could change everything we think we know about human history and technological capability. And every day that passes, those secrets remain locked away, protected not just by ancient engineering, but by our own reluctance to face truths that might be too extraordinary to accept. The question isn't whether we have the technology to open that tomb. The question is whether we have the courage to deal with what we might find inside. Because sometimes, the most dangerous discoveries aren't the ones that kill you. They're the ones that force you to question everything you believed about the world. And in a chamber sealed beneath 22 square miles of underground tunnels, surrounded by rivers of liquid mercury and protected by mechanisms we still don't understand. Those kinds of discoveries are waiting for someone brave enough to break the seals and step into a world that might be far more advanced, far more sophisticated, and far more challenging than anything we're prepared to encounter. The tomb of China's first emperor isn't just hiding treasure. It's hiding the possibility that our entire understanding of ancient human achievement has been catastrophically wrong from the very beginning. The question becomes even more complex when you consider what happened to everyone else who knew the tomb's secrets. Because the emperor didn't just kill the craftsmen and concubines. He systematically eliminated anyone who could compromise his underground kingdom's security. Historical records hint at a purge that went far beyond the construction workers. Government officials who had overseen different aspects of the project, military commanders who had provided security during construction, even family members who might have overheard conversations about the tomb's layout or contents. The emperor spent his final years methodically erasing human knowledge of what he had built, not just to protect treasure, but to ensure that whatever was hidden in those chambers would remain hidden until he decided it was time to reveal it. And here's where the story becomes truly disturbing. He never intended for that time to come. Think about the emperor's worldview for a moment. He believed he would achieve immortality and return to rule his underground kingdom personally. The tomb wasn't designed as a permanent burial site. It was designed as a temporary residence while he figured out how to come back from the dead. The mercury rivers, the automated crossbows, the sealed chambers, these weren't just defensive measures, they were preservation systems. Mechanisms designed to keep everything exactly as he left it until the moment of his return. This explains why the tomb's security was so incredibly sophisticated. It wasn't built to keep treasure hunters out forever. It was built to keep everything protected for decades, maybe centuries, while the emperor worked on his immortality project from the other side of death. But centuries turned into millennia, and the emperor never returned. His underground kingdom has been waiting in perfect preservation for over 2,000 years, maintained by systems that are still functioning, still protecting secrets that were never meant to stay secret forever. And that creates a terrifying possibility. What if opening the tomb would trigger something the emperor left behind? Not just booby traps or mercury poisoning, but some kind of mechanism designed to activate only when disturbed. Remember, this was a man who had access to the most advanced technologies of his time, a ruler who commanded resources that dwarfed most modern governments, an emperor who spent nearly 4 decades planning for every possible contingency in his quest for eternal life. What if he anticipated that someday people would try to break into his tomb? What if he prepared countermeasures that go far beyond simple mechanical traps? Recent discoveries around the tomb complex have revealed engineering solutions that shouldn't exist. Seismic monitoring equipment has detected mechanical vibrations deep underground that seem to follow regular patterns. Ground-penetrating radar has identified moving components within the drainage system that appear to be actively responding to environmental changes. These aren't random geological phenomena. They're signs of machinery. Ancient machinery that's still operational after 2 millennia underground. But machinery designed to do what? Protect the tomb's contents? Preserve the emperor's body? Or something else entirely? Some researchers have proposed a theory that sounds like science fiction but is grounded in disturbing archaeological evidence. They suggest that the emperor's engineers developed some form of automated guardian system. Mechanical sentinels programmed to protect the tomb not just from intruders, but from unauthorized opening attempts. The evidence is circumstantial, but compelling. Metallic anomalies detected throughout the underground complex that don't match known mineral deposits. Electromagnetic signatures that suggest the presence of large metal objects in configurations that serve no obvious structural purpose. And, most mysteriously, acoustic phenomena that indicate movement in chambers that should be completely sealed. If this theory is correct, then the tomb isn't just protected by passive defenses. It's actively defended by systems that are still waiting, still watching, still ready to respond to threats exactly as they were programmed to do over 2,000 years ago. And that brings us to perhaps the most unsettling discovery of all. The tomb's defensive systems might already know we're there. Over the past decade, archaeologists have noticed subtle changes in the underground complex that correlate with increased surface activity. Mercury vapor emissions that spike during excavation periods, seismic vibrations that intensify when research equipment is operated nearby, temperature variations in the soil that seem to respond to human presence above ground. It's as if something down there is monitoring what we're doing. Something that's been dormant for centuries, but is now beginning to wake up as we get closer to understanding its secrets. The sealed tomb of China's first emperor lies beneath our feet, protecting secrets that could rewrite everything we think we know about human history. For over 2,000 years, it has waited in perfect silence, guarded by mercury rivers, ancient traps, and our own fear of what we might discover inside. We've barely scratched the surface of this underground kingdom, yet every fragment we've uncovered challenges our most fundamental assumptions about what ancient civilizations could achieve. Chrome-plated weapons that predate modern chemistry by millennia, mass production techniques that weren't supposed to exist until the Industrial Revolution, engineering systems that still function perfectly after 2,000 years underground. And somewhere in the heart of that sealed complex, surrounded by flowing mercury and protected by mechanisms we don't understand, lies the body of an emperor who believed he could conquer death itself. The question isn't whether we have the technology to open that tomb. The question is whether we're ready for what we might find. Because sometimes the most dangerous discoveries aren't the ones that kill you. They're the ones that force you to question everything you believed about the world. And deep beneath the soil of China, those discoveries are still waiting.